Museum of Extinct Things, when humanity breaks the glass box. The first thing Lionel Kade noticed was the silence. Not the absence of sound that would have been merciful. This was the presence of silence, a thick, suffocating thing that pressed against his eardrums like deep water. His lungs burned. His throat clicked as he swallowed, the noise obscenely loud in the void. Then came the light, cold, white, clinical. The kind of illumination that belonged in operating theaters and morgues. He was standing upright. That realization came slowly, his brain struggling to reconcile the vertical orientation with the complete absence of sensation in his limbs. No floor beneath his feet, no wall against his back. Just suspension. Lionel's eyes focused, and the world sharpened into horror. Glass, he was encased in glass. Beyond the transparent barrier stretched an endless gallery of identical cubes, each containing a frozen figure. Row upon row, column upon column, disappearing into a vanishing point that suggested the room had no end. Some of the figures were humanoid. Others decidedly were not. To his left, something with too many joints and a carapace like polished obsidian hung in its cube, mandibles open in what might have been a scream. Its eyes, compound, multifaceted, caught the light like shattered mirrors. Lionel's breath fogged the glass. He could move then, barely. His fingers twitched, responding to commands that felt like they were traveling through molasses. He turned his head, a glacial process, and saw the placard mounted at eye level on the exterior of his cube. The text was in English. Somehow, that was the most disturbing detail yet. Terran Tier 3, Aggressive Primate Culture. Probable self-termination, 150 years. Specimen Academic Subtype, Historian. Acquisition date, untranslatable. Status preserved. Lionel stared at the words, read them again. A third time. His mind, trained in the analysis of dead civilizations, cataloged the implications with the detached precision of a coroner examining a corpse. Specimen, not person, not even prisoner. A butterfly pinned to velvet. Consciousness restoration successful. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, a pleasant tenor with the cadence of a museum docent. Lionel's eyes tracked movement beyond the glass. A figure approached bipedal, roughly humanoid in proportion, but wrong in the details. Its skin had the texture of brushed aluminum, and its face was a smooth oval broken only by 3 vertical slits that might have been eyes. It wore something that resembled a lab coat, if lab coats were made of liquid mercury. I am Keeper 7, curatorial specialist for Sector 9 Gamma. The being's voice emanated from a device on its chest, the translation flawless but somehow hollow. You are experiencing disorientation. This is expected. Your neural patterns have been successfully transferred to a preservation matrix. You are safe. Safe, Lionel repeated. His voice was a croak. You kidnapped me. Rescued, Keeper 7 corrected, with the patience of someone explaining basic arithmetic to a child. Your species is on a terminal trajectory. Internal conflict, resource depletion, atmospheric degradation. The statistical models are unambiguous. We are preserving your essence before the inevitable collapse. Lionel's hands pressed against the glass. The surface was warm, almost body temperature, and it yielded slightly under pressure, not solid but not quite liquid either. We aren't extinct. Not yet. Keeper 7 tilted its head, the gesture eerily human. But you will be. The Directorate has observed 847 species matching your developmental profile. None survived their technological adolescence. You are the backup copy, Dr. Kade. Your original file is corrupted. We aren't a file. The words came out sharper than Lionel intended, anger cutting through the fog of disorientation. We're a process. We adapt. We change. Yes, chaotically. Keeper 7's tone suggested mild distaste, the way one might discuss a particularly messy chemical reaction. Your species exhibits extreme behavioral variance. Aggression, altruism, creativity, destruction, all coexisting without coherent pattern. It is inefficient. Lionel's eyes swept the gallery again, and this time he noticed the patterns. The cubes weren't arranged randomly. They were grouped, clustered by type. He could see other humans, now dozens of them, scattered throughout the visible rows. A woman in military fatigues 3 cubes to his right. A man covered in tattoos 2 rows back. A teenager with purple hair directly across from him, eyes wide with terror. "You sorted us," Lionel said slowly, "like specimens in a collection." "Correct, by behavioral archetype. Academics, warriors, laborers, creatives, each preserved in representative samples." Keeper 7 gestured with a 3-fingered hand. "Your diversity is your defining characteristic. We have captured it comprehensively." Lionel's gaze locked onto the tattooed man. The man was staring back, and as Lionel watched, he raised one hand and tapped against his glass. Not frantically, deliberately. 3 short taps, pause, 3 more. A rhythm. "How long?" Lionel asked, not looking away from the tattooed man. "Subjectively, you have been unconscious for approximately 7 minutes. Objectively, your acquisition occurred 3.7 of your years ago." 3 years. Lionel's stomach lurched. 3 years in a box while the Archivists played taxonomist with humanity. He tapped back 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. SOS. The universal distress signal. The tattooed man's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. He tapped again, a different pattern, more complex. "Do not attempt communication," Keeper 7 said, though there was no urgency in its tone. "The preservation matrix limits motor function to prevent self-harm. You cannot damage the exhibit." "Exhibit," Lionel echoed. He looked at the placard again. Tier 3 Aggressive Primate Culture, the clinical language of a zoo. "You think you're saving us. We are saving you. Your essence, your knowledge, your cultural artifacts, all preserved in perpetuity. When your homeworld completes its self-termination sequence, you will exist here. Immortal, perfect." "Static," Lionel said. "Stable," Keeper 7 corrected. Lionel pressed both palms against the glass, feeling the strange give of the material. The tattooed man was still tapping. The teenager with purple hair had noticed now, her head turning to watch. And beyond her, in the next row, a woman in what looked like mechanic's coveralls was staring at the floor of her cube with intense concentration. They were all awake, all aware, all watching. "You made a mistake," Lionel said quietly. Keeper 7's head tilted again. "Clarify." "You grouped us by type, warrior, academic, laborer. You assumed our differences would keep us isolated." Lionel met the alien's unreadable gaze. "But you're thinking like a curator. We think like survivors." "Your statement lacks logical foundation." "Does it?" Lionel tapped the glass again, and this time he saw the ripple, a dozen other humans responding, the rhythm spreading through the gallery like a heartbeat. "You studied our history, our wars, our conflicts, our self-destruction, but you missed the other pattern." "There is no other pattern. The data is comprehensive." Lionel smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "We're really good at breaking out of cages." Keeper 7 stood motionless for a long moment, its alien features impossible to read. Then it turned and glided away, the mercury coat trailing behind it like liquid shadow. Alone again, Lionel looked at the tattooed man. The man nodded once, then pointed down at the floor of his cube. Lionel followed the gesture and saw it, a faint discoloration in the otherwise uniform surface. A seam, a weakness. The teenager was watching the walls. The mechanic was studying the ceiling. And somewhere in the rows beyond, Lionel could see others stirring, testing boundaries, mapping their prisons. The Archivists had made a museum of humanity. They'd sorted them, labeled them, preserved them. But they'd forgot the most important rule of museums. Never put humans in a glass box. They will rearrange your entire collection. The stasis field cycled every 4 hours and 17 minutes. Lionel had counted. 3 cycles so far, each one bringing a brief window of increased mobility as the preservation matrix adjusted for what Keeper 7 had called biomaintenance. During those precious seconds, the glass became slightly more permeable, the air inside the cube refreshed, and the humans could move almost normally. Almost. It was enough. The tattooed man had introduced himself during the second cycle, his voice muffled but audible through the temporarily thinned barrier. Marcus Reeves, East Oakland, U. Lionel Kade, Berkeley historian. Marcus had grinned at that, showing gold teeth. Course you are. They got me labeled criminal subtype, like I'm a fucking Pokemon. He'd tapped the glass between them, 3 cubes separated them but sound carried during the maintenance window. You notice the pattern. The groupings, Lionel confirmed. They clustered us by perceived social role. Yeah, and they fucked it up. Marcus jerked his head toward the cube behind him. That's Gia, computer science grad student. They tagged her technical laborer. She's been watching the energy flow in these walls. Lionel had craned his neck to see. The young woman, early 20s, black hair in a practical braid, was pressed against the side of her cube, eyes tracking something invisible. When she noticed them watching, she'd held up her hand and made a gesture like a wave but deliberate, showing the motion of something flowing. The field pulses, she'd called out, her accent placing her somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. It's not constant. There's a feedback loop. The system monitors our vital signs and adjusts the stasis intensity in real time. Can you disrupt it? Lionel had asked. Maybe. If we all spike our heart rates simultaneously during a maintenance cycle, the system might interpret it as a medical emergency. Could trigger a safety protocol. The third voice had come from below, a man in the cube beneath Lionel's, visible only as a distorted shape through the translucent floor. Elias Okonkwo, combat engineer, formerly Nigerian Army. I've been mapping the gravity plating. These cubes are modular. They're designed to be moved, which means they have to be able to disconnect from the main power grid. Marcus had laughed, a sharp bark of sound. So we got a historian, a gangster, a hacker, and a demo guy. The Archivists put us together thinking we'd be too different to cooperate. They studied our conflicts, Lionel had said slowly, the pieces clicking together in his mind. They saw the wars, the tribal divisions, the violence. They assumed diversity equals dysfunction. But they didn't study our potential, Gia had added. They only looked backward. The maintenance cycle had ended then, the field thickening again, but the seed was planted. Now, during the fourth cycle, they were ready. Lionel watched the reflections in his glass, using the curved surface like a funhouse mirror to observe the others. Sarah, the purple-haired teenager, tagged as youth subtype, rebellious, was 3 cubes to his left. She turned out to be a pre-med student with a photographic memory and a talent for reading lips. She'd been relaying messages between clusters of humans too far apart to hear each other directly. Through her, Lionel had learned there were 47 humans awake in this section of the gallery. 47 different backgrounds, skill sets, and perspectives. The Archivists had collected them like butterflies, pinning each to their designated spot in the taxonomy of human dysfunction. They'd created a perfect cross-section of human adaptability and called it a weakness. The field began to thin. Lionel felt it in his chest first, a loosening like a held breath finally released. His fingers flexed, fully responsive now. Around him, he could sense the others stirring. Now, he said, not shouting but projecting his voice the way he did in lecture halls. Everyone, on my mark. He could see Marcus nodding, Gia pressing her palm against the glass, Elias bracing himself. Sarah was grinning, the expression fierce and feral. Think about running, Lionel instructed. Think about fighting. Think about the worst fear you've ever felt and the best victory you've ever won. Make your heart race. He closed his eyes and let himself remember. The night his daughter was born, the terror and joy mixing into something that had made his pulse hammer so hard he thought he might pass out. The moment he defended his dissertation, adrenaline turning his blood to lightning. The time he'd nearly drowned as a child, panic flooding every cell. His heart rate spiked. He could feel it, a drumbeat in his ears, his chest, his throat. Around him, 46 other humans did the same. The effect was immediate. The stasis field flickered, a visible ripple of distortion running through the gallery like a stone dropped in still water. Alarms began to sound, not loud, but insistent, a rising tone that suggested urgency without panic. Biometric anomaly detected, a synthetic voice announced, initiating emergency medical protocol. The glass walls of the cubes began to descend. Not quickly, the system was designed for safety, lowering the barriers with careful precision to avoid harming the precious specimens. But it was enough. As soon as the gap appeared, Marcus was moving. He wedged his fingers into the opening and pulled, muscles straining, and the glass accelerated its descent with a pneumatic hiss. Go, go, go! Elias was out of his cube, dropping to the floor with the practiced grace of someone who'd done 1,000 combat drops. He was already at Gia's cube, helping her out. Lionel's barrier cleared his head, and he ducked under it, his legs nearly buckling as full gravity reasserted itself. The floor was cold and smooth, some kind of composite material that felt like polished stone. He grabbed Sarah's arm as she stumbled out of her cube, steadying her. "We're not running," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We secure this room first. We wake the others." The others? Marcus was already moving toward the next row of cubes, where more humans were trapped. "Doc, we need to move before they lock us down again, I know." Lionel pointed at the adjacent rows, where non-human specimens were beginning to stir. "But we're not leaving anyone in a cage, human or otherwise." Gia was at a control panel embedded in the wall, her fingers flying over the interface. "The system is trying to re-establish the stasis field. I can hold it off for maybe 3 minutes. Then we work fast." Lionel moved to the nearest non-human cube. The creature inside was massive, easily 8 feet tall, with a chitinous exoskeleton that gleamed like oil-slick metal. Its placard read, "Cathar Warrior Caste, Extinct Cultural Genocide." "You sure about this?" Marcus asked, but he was already at the control mechanism, figuring out the release. "They called them extinct," Lionel said. "They're not, they're here just like us." The glass dropped. The Cathar's eyes, 4 of them, arranged in a diamond pattern on its angular head, snapped open. It looked at Lionel, then at Marcus, then at the gallery beyond. When it spoke, the translation device on the wall rendered its clicking, chittering language into flat English. "You freed me." "Yeah," Marcus said. "Welcome to the jailbreak." The Cathar's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. "I am T.K. Reth. I was a soldier. I will fight." "Good," Lionel said, "because we're about to start a war." More cubes were opening now, humans and aliens spilling out into the gallery. The alarms were getting louder, and Lionel could see movement in the distance, sleek, floating drones converging on their position. Elias grabbed a piece of the stasis field generator, ripping it free from its housing with a shower of sparks. "These things are designed to capture, not kill. They'll try to contain us." "Then we don't let them." Gia held up a shard of the placard glass, its edge wicked sharp. "We improvise." Lionel looked at the assembled group. Humans and aliens, criminals and academics, warriors and engineers. The Archivists had collected them as examples of dysfunction, evidence of inevitable self-destruction. They'd created an army and called it a museum. "All right," Lionel said. "Let's show them what happens when the exhibits fight back." The first drone died to a piece of its own technology. Elias had ripped a stasis conduit from the wall, a meter-long cylinder that hummed with barely contained energy, and swung it like a bat. The drone, a sleek ovoid of silver metal, had been descending with mechanical precision, its capture field already extending. The conduit connected with a sound like a gong, and the drone's field inverted, collapsing inward. The machine crumpled like a crushed can and dropped. "Huh," Elias said, hefting the improvised weapon. "That works." Around him, the gallery had transformed into controlled chaos. 47 humans and a growing number of freed aliens were moving with purpose, not panic. Marcus had organized a perimeter, positioning the physically strongest individuals, human and otherwise, at the choke points. Gia was at a secondary control panel, her fingers dancing across the interface as she locked doors and rerouted power. And Lionel stood in the center, coordinating. "Sarah, how many more sections like this?" he called. The teenager was at a wall display, her photographic memory processing the facility's schematic faster than any computer. "At least 12, maybe more. The map's incomplete, there are whole wings marked as restricted access." "Tkreth, can your people fight in low gravity?" The Cathar warrior clicked its mandibles in affirmation. "We evolved in asteroid colonies. Low gravity is natural." "Good. Elias, can you disable the gravity plating in the next corridor?" "Give me 30 seconds. Lionel turned to Marcus. "We need to move fast, but we can't leave anyone behind. Every cube we pass, we open." Marcus grinned, gold teeth flashing. "You know they're gonna call this a riot." "Let them." Lionel picked up a shard of placard glass, feeling its weight. "We're not rioting, we're evolving." The next wave of drones came in a coordinated swarm, 24 of them, descending from ceiling hatches like mechanical locusts. But Elias had finished his work, and as the drones entered the corridor, gravity cut out. The machines, designed for controlled descent, tumbled in the sudden weightlessness. The Cathar warriors launched themselves into the zero-G space with terrifying grace, their multiple limbs finding purchase on walls and ceiling. They moved like spiders, fast and precise, tearing into the drones with claws that could shred metal. "Beautiful," Marcus breathed, watching the carnage. A human voice shouted from the next gallery, one of the newly freed prisoners, a woman with the calloused hands of a manual laborer. "More cubes here, at least 100. "Open them all," Lionel ordered. "Everyone, human, alien, doesn't matter. If they're in a cage, they're on our side." The liberation spread like wildfire. Each freed prisoner joined the effort, and the crowd grew exponentially. Lionel saw a massive, bear-like creature with 6 eyes helping a frail, elderly human woman out of her cube. A group of humans in prison jumpsuits were working alongside something that looked like a living crystal, prying open a cube that contained a being made of what appeared to be liquid light. The diversity the Archivists had catalogued, as weakness was becoming a weapon. "Dr. Kade," Gia's voice was urgent. "I'm reading a massive power surge from the central hub. They're trying to reinitialize the stasis field for the entire sector." "Can you stop it?" "Not from here. We'd need access to the primary control center." "Then that's where we go." Lionel raised his voice, projecting over the noise. "Everyone listen. We need to reach the control center. Stay together, watch each other's backs, and remember, they want to capture us, not kill us. We're too valuable as specimens." "That's our advantage," someone shouted. "That's our leverage," Lionel corrected. "They built this whole facility on the idea of preservation. They won't destroy what they've spent years collecting." Marcus moved to his side, the improvised weapon, now a jagged piece of drone hull resting on his shoulder. "You're betting our lives on their philosophy." "I'm betting on their arrogance," Lionel said. "They think they understand us. They think they've catalogued every variable, but they only studied our history." "And not our potential," Marcus finished, echoing Gia's words from earlier. "All right, Doc, let's go teach them about human unpredictability." They moved as a unit, not a mob, but a coordinated force. The Cathar warriors took point, their combat instincts honed by generations of warfare. The humans filled the gaps, using tools and tactics that ranged from military precision to street-fighting brutality. The other freed aliens contributed their own unique abilities. The crystalline being could refract light into blinding beams. The liquid-like creature could slip through gaps too small for solid matter. The Archivists' drones kept coming, but they were designed for a different kind of threat. They expected specimens to flee or cower. They didn't expect coordinated resistance. They certainly didn't expect a human engineer riding on the back of an 8-foot insectoid alien, wielding a welding torch scavenged from a maintenance closet. "This is insane," Elias laughed, sealing a door shut behind them as they advanced. "This is absolutely insane." "This is humanity," Lionel corrected. They reached the control center's outer door to find Keeper 7 waiting. The Archivist stood alone, its mercury coat rippling with agitation. Behind it, the massive door to the control center was sealed, a barrier of what looked like solid diamond. "Stop," Keeper 7 said, and for the first time its translated voice carried something that might have been emotion. "Fear. This behavior is not in your historical profile. You are acting outside predicted parameters." Lionel stepped forward, the crowd at his back. "That's because you only studied our history. You cataloged our wars, our failures, our self-destruction. You built your entire model on what we've been. The data is comprehensive, centuries of observation." "Of the past," Lionel interrupted. "You never considered what we could become. You saw our diversity and called it dysfunction. You saw our conflicts and assumed we'd destroy ourselves, but you missed the pattern." "There is no other pattern." "Yes, there is." Lionel gestured at the crowd behind him, humans and aliens, warriors and academics, criminals and engineers, all standing together. "We adapt. We improvise. We take the broken pieces of our world and build something new. That's not dysfunction, that's evolution." Keeper 7's head tilted, the gesture now clearly one of confusion. "You were specimens, preserved, safe." "We were prisoners," Marcus said, moving to stand beside Lionel. "And humans don't do well in cages." "None of us do," Tkareth added, the Cathar's mandibles clicking in what might have been agreement. Keeper 7 looked at the assembled crowd, and Lionel could see the moment the Archivist's worldview cracked. It had spent years, maybe centuries, building a museum of extinct and dying species, preserving them like insects in amber. It had never considered that the insects might not want to be preserved. "The Directorate will not allow this," Keeper 7 said, but its voice was hollow. "They will vent the atmosphere. They will destroy the facility rather than lose the collection." "Then they'll prove they're not curators," Lionel said quietly. "They'll prove they're murderers, and their entire society built on the lie of benevolent preservation will collapse." He stepped closer to the Archivist, close enough to see his reflection in its smooth, alien face. "Open the door, Keeper 7. Let us speak to the Directorate, or watch everything you've built turn to ash." For a long moment, the Archivist stood frozen. Then, slowly, it turned and placed its 3-fingered hand on the door's control panel. The diamond barrier split open with a sound like breaking ice. "You are not what we thought you were," Keeper 7 said softly. "No," Lionel agreed, "we're not." They entered the control center, and the real work began. The control center was a cathedral of information. Holographic displays filled the air like stained glass windows, each one showing a different section of the vast facility. Lionel could see galleries stretching into infinity, thousands upon thousands of cubes containing beings from across the galaxy. The scale was staggering. This wasn't just a museum. It was an ark, a tomb, a monument to the Archivist's fear of change. Gia was already at the main console, her hands moving with the confidence of someone who'd spent her life translating between human and machine logic. The broadcast system is galaxy-wide. They use it to coordinate between facilities and report to the Directorate homeworld. "Can you hijack it?" Lionel asked. "Already done. You're live in 30 seconds. Marcus positioned himself by the door, the makeshift weapon ready. They're gonna try to shut us down the moment you start talking. Let them try. Lionel moved to the center of the room where a camera array was mounted. He could see himself in the reflection of the nearest display, disheveled, exhausted but alive. Behind him, the freed prisoners filled the control center, a living testament to the Archivists' failure. 10 seconds, Gia said. Lionel took a breath. He'd given thousands of lectures, spoken at conferences, defended his research to hostile academics. But this was different. This wasn't about the past. This was about the future. 3, 2, 1, you're on. The displays shifted, and Lionel saw his own face replicated across hundreds of screens. Somewhere, on the Archivist homeworld and every facility like this one, beings were watching. My name is Dr. Lionel Kade, he began, his voice steady. I am a human from the planet Earth. 3 years ago, I was taken from my home by the Archivist Directorate. I was told I was being saved, preserved, protected from my species' inevitable self-destruction. He paused, letting the words sink in. I was told I was a specimen in a museum of extinct things, but I'm not extinct. None of us are. He gestured, and the camera panned to show the crowd behind him. Humans and aliens, all very much alive, all very much free. The Directorate has built its entire civilization on a lie. They claim to be preserving species, saving cultures, protecting the galaxy's diversity. But preservation isn't salvation. It's stagnation. It's death by another name. On the displays he could see movement, Archivist officials conferring, their body language agitated. Good. Let them panic. You've studied us, Lionel continued. You've cataloged our wars, our conflicts, our failures. You've built predictive models that say we'll destroy ourselves within a century. And maybe you're right. Maybe we will. But that's our choice to make, not yours. He moved closer to the camera, his voice dropping but losing none of its intensity. You see our diversity and call it dysfunction. You see our conflicts and assume we're doomed. But you're missing the point. We don't survive despite our differences. We survive because of them. Every problem we've ever solved, every challenge we've ever overcome, came from taking broken pieces and building something new. Behind him, Tkareth stepped forward, the Cathar warrior's massive form filling the frame. My people were declared extinct. Cultural genocide, your placard said, but we're not extinct. We're here, and we're angry. More beings moved into view, the crystalline alien, the liquid-like creature, dozens of others. Each one a species the Archivists had written off as lost. You've been kidnapping people across the galaxy, Lionel said, calling it rescue, calling it preservation, but it's theft, it's imprisonment, and it ends now. A new voice cut through the broadcast, cold, authoritative, emanating from the control center's speakers. Dr. Kade, this is Directorate Overseer Prime. You are in violation of preservation protocols. Stand down immediately, or we will be forced to terminate the facility. Lionel smiled, and it was not a kind expression. There it is, the truth behind the lie. You'll kill us rather than admit you're wrong. We are protecting the galaxy's heritage. You're protecting your own ego, Lionel interrupted. Your entire society is built on the idea that you're the benevolent curators, the wise preservers. If you admit you've been wrong, that you've been kidnapping and imprisoning sentient beings for centuries, your whole civilization collapses. Silence on the line. Lionel pressed his advantage. So here's your choice, Overseer. You can vent the atmosphere and kill us all. Prove to the galaxy that you're murderers, not curators. Destroy your own moral foundation. Or you can let us go, all of us, every being in every facility, and you can start actually helping species instead of embalming them. You don't understand the complexity. I understand perfectly, Lionel said. You're afraid of change, afraid of chaos, afraid of a galaxy that won't hold still long enough for you to catalog it. But the universe doesn't work that way. Life is messy. It's unpredictable. It's alive. He looked directly into the camera, speaking not just to the overseer but to every archivist watching. You wanted to preserve us, to keep us safe and static and dead, but we're not museum pieces. We're not files in your database. We're living, breathing, evolving beings, and we will not be caged. The silence stretched. Lionel could feel the tension in the room, everyone holding their breath. Then finally the overseer spoke. If we release you, what guarantee do we have that you won't destroy yourselves, that all our work won't be for nothing? None, Lionel said honestly. We might fail, we might fight, we might make every mistake you've predicted, but at least it will be our choice, our future, our story to write. Another pause, then, the directorate will convene. This broadcast is terminated. The displays went dark. Did we win? Sarah asked, her voice small in the sudden quiet. We will, Lionel said. They can't afford to kill us now, not with the whole galaxy watching. He was right. 6 hours later, the doors opened, not just in their facility but in every archivist installation across the galaxy. Thousands of beings, freed from their glass prisons, stepping out into a universe that had thought them lost. The directorate didn't fall immediately. Bureaucracies rarely do, but the cracks had formed and the truth was spreading. The benevolent curators were revealed as jailers. The preservers of culture were exposed as thieves of freedom. And humanity, chaotic, diverse, unpredictable humanity, had been the catalyst. Epilogue. 3 months later, Lionel stood on the bridge of the Resilience, a human ship cobbled together from salvaged archivist technology and sheer stubborn ingenuity. Through the viewport, he could see the facility where he'd been imprisoned, now empty and dark. We're getting hails from a dozen species, the communications officer reported. They want to know how we did it, how we organized the breakout. Lionel smiled. Tell them the truth. We didn't do anything special. We just refused to stay still. Marcus joined him at the viewport, a cup of something that approximated coffee in his hand. You know they're gonna write about this. The Great Museum Breakout. Humanity's first contact with the galaxy, and we started with a prison riot. Not a riot, Lionel corrected. A revolution. Same thing, Doc. No, Lionel said, watching the dark facility recede. A riot is chaos. A revolution is chaos with a purpose. Behind them, the crew worked humans and Cathar and a dozen other species, all working together, all free, all alive. The archivists had tried to preserve them, to keep them safe in glass boxes, frozen in time, protected from the messy business of living. They'd failed. Because the most important thing about humanity, about any living species, wasn't what they'd been. It was what they could become. And you couldn't preserve potential, you could only set it free. Lionel raised his own cup in a silent toast to the empty facility, to the broken cages, to the future they'd fought for. Never put humans in a glass box, he murmured. Marcus grinned. They'll rearrange your entire museum. The Resilience turned away from the facility and jumped to FTL, carrying its crew toward a galaxy that was about to learn a new rule. Humanity was here, and they were done being exhibits. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more journeys. Share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for the next adventure.